Shit. Well, I mean, that kind of foreshadowed a lot of stuff because you ended up working with Karis later. But I guess we can get into that.
Well, let's get into like the Tri Blues like start and
That's well, I kind of wanted to talk about that too. So you guys put out 2 projects under Tri Blues, correct? You put out the Diverse
1.5.
1.5. Okay.
Well, I called Diverse 1.5 because we distributed it through a Canadian distribution company. That kind of weird. I'm like, damn, I'm going down memory lane. Because the homie Moto Blizzard, if you remember Moto, he's like Moto Haas now, he's like an EDM DJ now. But at the time, I had met him on my first tour, and he hooked us up with this Canadian distribution company. So we never released, what was the name of the second album? Diverse?
Diverse.
We never released Diverse in the States. We only released it in Canada. So that's why I always say 1.5, because if you were if you were in LA Underground at the time,
yeah, you couldn't even get a copy of it.
Nah. Like, you didn't even probably know it released. If you heard it today, you'd probably be like, what the fuck is this? I never even knew. And I did distribute some copies here, like, you know, just burn them in my CD burner and just give them to people because I was out performing this shit. I was performing Melodic. I was performing fucking Triune and all these fucking songs because we had put together like a band at the time. Right before Tri Blues ended, we put together a 3-piece band with Job Blues on the turntables. We were kind of doing that. We was performing all these records. So a lot of people were like, yo, where the fuck is this music at? So I was just burning like 10 CDs and bringing them to a show. So there are pieces out there. We also got vinyl. You know what I'm saying? I have a piece right there. But we had vinyl, and we distributed that vinyl here in the States as well, a little bit, like, you know, in stores like The Basement and shit. So there's a few pieces here. That's why I say 1.5.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I know Mike Faceless eventually at some point ended up leaving the True Artist movement. He had his own issues with Job Blues, which I'm not really going to get into, but...
No, we can, though.
Okay, go ahead.
No, we can. If I'm going to keep it 100, that was the first kind of crack in me and Job Blues relationship. That was the first kind of like, I don't know if I should be here moment. So Mike and Ja had their issues around a record called Homeless that Mr. Word produced. And I can't get into the details as to like what the issue was, but Mike perceived it as jealousy and Job Blues perceived it as trying to get to the best quality. And they had an argument, and then what led me to feel some kind of way about Job Blues at that time was we had put out the Wax Dwellers album. So I pull up to the studio. Job Blues has a gang of CDs to give me. Like, hey, these are going for $10 a pop. So when you go out to your spots and you're selling them, bring me back X amount of dollars and you keep X amount of dollars per unit. I was like, all right, cool. So we're heading, you know, so I grabbed the CDs. He's like, this one is for your personal, you know what I mean? Because the other ones had like shrink wrap and shit on them.
Of course.
So I take my personal, I can't wait to get in the car and listen to it because I hadn't heard the whole thing through. All I heard was my contributions. You have to remember, Origin is on this, B. Jones is on this, Faceless is on this, fucking Sketch is on this. Job Blues and Mr. Word have their own little scratching songs, and there's a gang of shit on this that I
still haven't heard this compilation, by the way. They put out 2 compilations. One of them that I have has 2 freestyles at the end with you and Mike and everyone going off, and even Chaos is on it.
Yeah, I think Deadeye's on it.
I've heard those. I haven't heard the other compilation.
I have the whole thing. We can listen to it today.
So, okay.
We can listen to it today. I have the whole thing. I have it. I still have the CD. So we can listen to it today. So I get in the car and I'm listening to these records, and there's a record at the end that I'm on that Mike Faceless is on. And when you get to Mike's verse, there's like this weird effect that's put on it, which is obviously done in an intentional fashion. Like Job Blues was a fucking perfectionist to whatever his limitations were. We both were. We didn't have the best equipment in the world, and we didn't even know 100% what we were doing. But to whatever our idea of perfection was,
we were striving for it.
And I knew Ja would never let this go out this way. So immediately I call him and I'm like, yo, did you notice? Cause you duped, cause Ja Blues at the time, he did have some cool equipment. He had like this stackable fucking CD burner. So you put like 10 CDs.
Oh yeah. I remember all the ones that are daisy chained together. They're serial rated together.
Yes. So he had that.
Those were super fire back then, by the way.
He's burning 10 CDs at a pop at a time. I know this sounds like some fucking prehistoric shit to the listeners, but this is real.
No, late 90s, this shit was the illest.
So he had a gang of CDs ready for us. I saw Mike at the studio picking up CDs at the same time I was. So I called John. I'm like, yo, you know this shit went out like this? He's like, yeah. And I was like, well, why did you allow, this doesn't even sound good. And he was basically like, yo, that's a fuck you to Mike and to let him know that he's no longer in this group. And at that point, don't get me wrong, I understood that Ja and Mike had issues, and I didn't want to get in between that. But when it compromises the integrity of the music that I'm on, I had a fucking problem with that. So that was kind of my first little I don't know if this is the right place for me to be.
Got a clique full of shooters. They won't let me down.